If you are a Sega fan, you likely are well acquainted with Shinobi. It started out in the arcade in 1987 using a combination of Rolling Thunder style play mechanics and Sega's trademarked screen clearing magic attacks. During Sega's home hardware run, you could almost always count on Shinobi to be a really solid addition to your collection. Whether it was the Master System original or its Sega Genesis outings, they were pretty much guaranteed winners. Even the side stories like Shadow Dancer were usually something special. Hell, even Alex Kidd got it right when he tackled the Shinobi theme. But in 1990, Sega internally developed and released the Cyber Shinobi, Shinobi Part 2. It was a direct sequel to the first in title and story. Here you are Joe Musashi's grandson, also named Joe, who must take down the evil Cyber Zed, a new organization born from the ashes of the two your grandfather destroyed. To put it kindly, it was not well received. Even the usually Sega-friendly Euromags blasted it as a poor game and a waste of your hard-earned money. In this episode, we're going to take a look at the Cyber Shinobi and find out if it's really as bad as everyone says. The Cyber Shinobi is quite similar to its predecessor in some ways and very different in others. It has the same left to right scrolling while you take down enemies with your sword and projectile based attacks. There's even some ninjutsu you can use. The differences start with a complete lack of hostages to rescue. Your goal is simply to defeat the stage by making it to the exit. Your main attack is now your sword, which is only capable of hitting enemies that are really close to you. Crouching allows you to do a sweep-like kick attack as well. These two melee attacks have a power gauge under your life bar that tells you how effective they are in killing your enemies. The higher the power gauge, the more damage you do. Picking up P icons increases this. You gain projectile attacks by picking up the S icon, which then shows you how many times you can use it via the shot gauge. There are 3 different projectiles: ninja stars, grenades, and a Vulcan cannon. These weapons stack on each other as you pick up individual S icons. Finally, your ninjutsu works in a similar way. Picking up N icons fills up the gauge, granting you access to different spells. Fire when it's low, and others like lightning when it gets higher. The L icon rounds out your list of power-ups, which replenishes your life gauge. Perhaps the most jarring difference from the original is the lack of a free-scrolling play area. Here the screen will stop and lock into place until you kill all the enemies. There are 2 types of jumps you can use. The basic version is like a little hop, while the other allows you to jump much higher by holding up and hitting the jump button. While there is no real platforming to speak of, you do have a ton of terrain of varying height to get over. Finally, each stage of course ends with a boss encounter. The artwork of the Cyber Shinobi is actually not that bad. Sprites are large and well detailed, and you can easily tell what everything is in the fore and backgrounds. Everything falls apart though when you start moving. The animation is choppy, the scrolling is choppy, and man are the hitboxes all out of whack. You can hit your enemies an inch away, and they can do the same to you. This breakdown in the graphics engine is actually this game's biggest issue. Because it feels so disjointed and choppy, it affects everything from your eyes to the gameplay. It throws your timing off with basic movement, attacks, jumps, hell, pretty much everything. The visuals do try and give you some variety, however. You get jungles, waterfalls, and enemy bases to traverse and do battle in. Unfortunately, these different locations add little to the visual appeal, thanks to loads of repeating assets and little variety in the enemy sprites. These issues are exacerbated by the gauges at the top of the screen taking up so much real estate. I mean, look at that. It's nearly half the available screen just for life and ammo counts. What you are left with is a so-so looking affair that runs very poorly. It may be called Shinobi 2, but it sure doesn't live up to its namesake. The music of Shinobi has always been iconic. I mean, just close your eyes, think about Shinobi, and I'm sure a familiar tune will pop into the back of your mind. The stuff presented here is not of the same quality, unfortunately. It has that hard edge Master System PSG you either love or hate, and while some of it has a decent enough flow, it lacks the quality elsewhere in the series. The Game Gear Shinobi titles really showed you how great an 8-bit soundtrack could be, but unfortunately we just don't see it here. I have a few examples for you to listen to. The number of things wrong with the Cyber Shinobi do not begin and end with its visuals and sound. The gameplay here is tough to love as well. Because the animation and scrolling feel so clunky, it impacts the way it plays on every level. Just the simple action of jumping feels wrong, and even the way you attack is off. I mean, why can't you slash in a wider and further arc in front of you? Why does my sword only hit things practically on top of me? That probably wouldn't have changed anything though, because the gameplay is really messy anyway. Check out the bad hit detection on the enemy sprites. You get a feel for it and accept it the longer you play, but it never feels like a good game should. This pretty much extends to everything. Boss encounters are choppy messes as well. Outside of the gameplay, things just keep getting worse. The stage design is point blank laughable in places. The opening stage actually has some variety in the things you do, but it seems the developers lost interest after that. When you begin the game, you have a variety of sub-levels, elevators, and obstacles to jump over to get to that exit. Then things take a much more simplistic twist by just being walk-right affairs completely absent of any interesting design at all. One stage is basically just you avoiding a helicopter, dropping bombs in the same pattern over and over. And another is a waterfall, where you literally just free fall the entire stage. No enemies at all. When you land, fight the boss and the stage ends. No joke. Even the death and continue system is completely borked here. Each stage has a set time limit that keeps running whether you live or die. If a stage is giving you trouble and you run through your entire stock of extra men, it's possible to run out of time the longer you play. This of course leads to a continue, and the resetting of your ammo, attack power, and ninja magic, which means then you are facing enemies that take numerous hits to defeat in an engine that doesn't play well to begin with. That sounds like the game would be terribly hard and difficult to finish. It's not. The stage design and enemies are so simplistic, you are still able to defeat the game with relative ease, particularly when compared to other Shinobi titles. The real difficulty here is actually stomaching the poor design upon death and having to replay these stages multiple times before you learn the best way to defeat them. When you finally do beat the Cyber Shinobi, there is no great sense of accomplishment. Instead, you are left feeling just like you wasted a few hours of your life on a game Sega should be ashamed they marketed and sold in the first place. The Cyber Shinobi, Shinobi Part 2 was somewhat of an oddity at the time. Sega usually had their A-team put out some real winners under the Shinobi branding. Not so here. The graphics, sound, and gameplay all had major problems that will turn most of you away after only a few minutes with the control pad in your hands. That really stinks too, because this was a Master System exclusive entry you couldn't play anywhere else. Heck, you still can't. That really only leaves two kinds of people I can recommend this game to. Die-hard Shinobi fans that have to see and play everything in the series, and Master System vets who possibly grew up with it as a kid and found some enjoyment after repeated play sessions. The rest of you will find this game a mere curiosity, a title that showed Sega didn't always hit home runs, no matter how great the series was elsewhere. It's a head-scratcher that Sega had the blueprints for a good action game already done with the first Shinobi title on the Master System. More of that with new enemies, boss encounters, and locations would have been far more preferable. Why they completely rewrote the engine like this is a complete mystery. While this made its way around the rest of the globe, it never was released in the United States or Japan. That means many of you probably haven't played it, and you can count yourself among the fortunate. This one is strictly for the platform evangelist that can find the good in anything, and those of us with more curiosity than sense. I fell into that latter category, so you don't have to. Stay far away from this one. I'm Sega Lord X. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.